Last night, I was having a conversation with my husband about emo culture and how emo culture is sort of the death nail, in a way, in alt culture, because it created this idea that alt culture could be pop. And we were talking about how it came to be and how emo culture evolved and the different pieces of it, from fashion to the music industry to social media. And as we were talking about social media and its role in developing emo culture, we were talking about how often people who identified as emo used social media in a very toxic way to gain attention, and things like self-harming on live videos on social media, or even suicide attempts on live videos on social media, and how people in the comments would just encourage them to go through with it. Yeah, hurt yourself some more. Yeah, go through with it. Do it, whatever. Awful things. As we were discussing this, we commented that people had this idea that what's on the screen isn't real, because social media just like jumped into our lives, and it was at a time when people generally had this idea of television or things on the internet or whatever as being fiction, that you couldn't really trust what you saw on the screen, and it was all a performance. It was all something somebody else, whatever. Even if you were watching the news, you're distant from it. You can dehumanize it. You can separate yourself from it. And so social media came around and people had that mentality, and bullying on the internet became such a huge problem and remains a problem to this day. It's almost the default now. I feel like you see more of it than you don't see of it. And that really played into the topic that I've been wanting to discuss this week. The topic that I want to discuss this week is patriarchy versus matriarchy. And I've been thinking about this subject for weeks now and wanting to discuss it. And I had an interaction with a content creator who I'm not going to name because we're not doing that here. This content creator had a crash out over men bullying her and her husband in the comments, which is quite valid. Like, crash out, sis. You do you. But when she crashed out about it, and she was calling out these horrible men in her comments section, she used the most misogynistic language. It was just vile, awful things, patriarchal language, misogynistic language, and I almost scrolled by. And I probably should have. But as I was scrolling, her first comment that was pinned was her saying, "Was my crash out valid?" And this is a content creator who I feel like is a lot more left-leaning and feminist and etc. than a lot of others. And I thought she can be held accountable. She can check herself. She's not somebody who's going to just be hateful and mean and not listen. And boy, was I wrong. Not only did she just respond with vitriol and calling me a fascist, which was very confusing and ridiculous, her husband also jumped in the comment section and started bullying me as well. Gaslighting me, telling me that that's not what these words mean. I didn't know anything, calling me a femdom fascist. And I ended up just blocking both of them, which is my new boundary that I have for Instagram. If people are going to repeatedly bully me in the comments, they're just going to get blocked because I don't care what you think of me. If all you can do is have a discussion, quote unquote, with dehumanizing language and just trying to bully me and see if you can win a fight and get your followers to give you more likes than they're giving me. And when I had this conversation, it kind of broke my heart. Not that I was that wrapped up in this content creator, but just this idea that we can't tell women, hey, that's really misogynistic language, don't say that, without them just fully flaming out and being even further misogynistic. And it's women who are claiming to be like fighting the patriarchy or whatever. And I said repeatedly, if you'd used homophobic slurs or racist slurs, I would have said the same thing. And we need to, I hate the phrase we need to normalize, but we really need to normalize calling people out on this. I don't care how good of a person you are, how awesome you are, how great your content creation is. If you're using misogynistic or homophobic or racist language, you need to be called out on that. You need to be called out when you say things that are problematic, that support the current systems that are in place. And if you can't be held accountable to that, if you have a problem with people telling you that your language is problematic, you probably shouldn't be creating content on the internet. You probably shouldn't be, because you need to be able to check yourself. You need to be able to be held accountable. And that's not to say that everybody who says you're wrong is right, but you need to be able to hear people saying, hey, your language is problematic, without immediately insulting them and going for a gut punch. I saw yesterday a video from another content creator who I follow, who I will name because it was great. The name of her page is Let's Not Date. And without getting into everything that she says, she made a video because she had made a post about a man who was being very problematic, which is the majority of her content. And when she called him out and checked him, a bunch of women jumped in the comments of the post that she had with the screenshots of the interaction and told her that she was a problem, that she was a bully, that she shouldn't talk to men like that. And towards the end of her video, she said, if your loyalty bends toward men who talk about shooting us, then you do not belong in a space built for women who intend to survive. And I felt like that was really a good quote to begin this episode with, especially given the context that I have just provided. Hi, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Naomi, and this is Mosaic in Progress. Patriarchy versus matriarchy. We kind of have this idea that it's this battle between, are men going to be in charge or are women going to be in charge? And I am here to dismantle that idea, because patriarchy is not men being in charge, despite what you have been led to believe. Oh, yes, it does appear that way, for sure. And to a degree, yes, it is, but it is not men being in charge so much as it is powerful people keeping their power. Patriarchy can't survive without capitalism and colonialism. And we're not going to get too deep into that in this episode, but patriarchy is not strong, healed, sacred masculine being in charge. Patriarchy is wounded masculine and wounded feminine. It is a power structure that insists on the elevation of an ideology, whether that is profit or power, and it's always one or the other of those, over people. Either we are worshiping power or we are worshiping profit, but either way, people are the price that we pay to further gaining more power or more profit. That's patriarchy. And we have been led to believe that it is this divine masculine structure. It is this divine masculine and feminine. A lot say we're not even going to get into Deepak Chopra and all of his problematic ideology that he has vomited all over the spiritual world. But enough said on that. There is this idea within patriarchy that somebody has to be in charge. And the default in charge is a man. It's where we get the term patriarchy, because we've decided it's got to be the dad. He's got to be the one in charge. Why wouldn't he be? Women are weak. They have periods. They have babies. I mean, good for them having the babies, keeping the population going. But we have to have the men in charge. And what's really funny to me about that is that patriarchy is also wounded feminine. It's not just wounded masculine ideology where they have to be in charge, they have to be the leaders, they have to be in charge of the family, they have to be in charge of the business, they have whatever, they got to be in charge all the time. And if they're not in charge, if there's a woman in charge, that means they failed as a man, or the institution that they're at, or society, whatever, has failed them by putting a weak woman in charge. Because that's how patriarchy views women, as weak. What's really interesting is this idea that we all come from women, that people try to push forward as a counter to patriarchal mindset, but it's a patriarchal belief. We all come from women. Yes. Women are the ones who incubate the babies. But they cannot do it. This is going to make a lot of people very angry or uncomfortable. And I hope you will sit with your feelings of anger or discomfort or whatever comes up for you when I say this. Women cannot make babies without men's pleasure. Women cannot make babies without men's pleasure. I don't care if it was created naturally through sex or in vitro fertilization. You have to have a man experience orgasm in order for you to make a baby. And the fact that we dismiss that and laugh at it is a disservice, not just to men, but to humanity. Because patriarchal society, as I said, only values power or profit. There is no value in pleasure. That's why we have such a hard time resting. That's why we feel guilty for it. We're guilty for spending money on things we don't really need. Pleasure is important. Pleasure, according to some religions, is the entire point of life. To experience the ecstasy that you can only experience as being human in a physical form. Yes, women do create the babies, but they cannot do it without the element of pleasure. And that is sacred. And that should be honored. patriarchy hurts men too. And we don't like to talk about that because, especially as women, because we feel like men are the ones suppressing us, men are the ones hurting us, and that is not incorrect. But men are also the ones being hurt. We don't like to talk about boys wounding, men's wounding. We don't like to talk about the fact that little boys are also sexually assaulted. They may not be the majority, but they're not an insignificant statistic. We don't like to talk about the fact that men also experience domestic violence. We don't like to talk about the fact that the majority of men experience emotional isolation, that their friends, their wives, their partners, their family do not want to hear that they're sad, that they're struggling, that they're feeling vulnerable. They say things to them like, ugh, you seem really weak right now. Oh, that's kind of like emasculating to see you like that. Like, I don't really see you as a man anymore. Because they have to be these emotionless voids of power, or we don't respect them. Patriarchy doesn't just hurt women. Patriarchy doesn't allow men to be human. And we talk about matriarchy as this like, oh, the mothers are going to rise up. The mothers are going to take charge. And to a degree that is true, but matriarchy is not mothers being in charge and dominating men. Matriarchy is a sacred wholeness. Matriarchy is community and collaboration versus the power structure of patriarchy. And if you look at matriarchal societies, they did not call themselves matriarchal. Matriarchy is patriarchal language because patriarchy needs for people to be divided. Men versus women, left versus right, northern versus southern, country versus city. Patriarchy thrives on division because it is the rule of ego. It is that part of our humanity that doesn't last. The part that thinks it needs to fight other people for a place in the world. The part that thinks everything is a competition. The small part of ourselves, the part that is not connected to our divinity, to our connectedness, to love. And it's interesting if you look at the Bible and you read all these things about worldliness and the problem with worldliness. It's all talking about ego. It's talking about living from this place of not acknowledging your spirituality or the fact that you are, yes, fully human, but also fully divine. That's a definition of worldliness, forgetting your soul. And delving further into that, you see how patriarchy corrupted the message of Jesus. Because we think about this word, the church, Christianity, the church. And Jesus talked about bringing in the new church. But the fact that we even use the word church is problematic. And you have, of course, King James to thank for this, because the original word that is used where it is translated church, it meant the assembly, the gathering. I believe the word was ecclesia. It meant the body of people. It was not about a building. It was about the people. And church comes from the Old English, kirk, which meant like a religious building, a temple, place where they gathered. And so we turned the focus from the people to the building, which then became a focus towards the institution. We have lost sight of the point. We lost it a long time ago. And even those who make the effort toward change now still don't have sight of it. I see calls for matriarchy from people who do not understand what matriarchy is. It is not a domination of men. It is an equality of people. Matriarchy, if we want to use that word, is the idea that life is the most important. Children are at the center and given the highest priority because they're the ones that need the protecting. The needs of the community are valued above individual profits. It's not a structure that elevates women above men. It is a structure of true, sacred, masculine and feminine, where everyone is honored for their contributions and everyone is valued as a human. Everyone is taken care of. It is a mutual aid. It is a mutual respect. I'm going to end this episode by circling back to my introduction and my interaction with the content creator who decided to start hurling insults at me when I told her her language was misogynistic. If you talk about women, calling them sluts or objectifying their bodies, if you use language like calling men pussies to call them weak, if you use language like saying you are a hollowed out pussy to say they're disgusting, you're part of the problem. I would say the same thing if you called someone the N-word, if you called someone a retard, if you said gay as an insult. You're part of the problem. Your language matters, and if you are using language that disenfranchises marginalized people, you're part of the problem. Using language that is intended to make a group of people small, to make them seem like something to not be, you are part of the problem. That's gay. Okay, well, why is that a bad thing then? Why are you saying that? Why do you think being gay is bad? Or did you think about it at all? Or did you just parrot what you heard someone else say? You're a pussy. Why are you saying that? Why is being a pussy a bad thing? Why do you think that's an insult? Your pussy is loose. Number one, that's not how vaginas work. That is a misogynistic lie that has been used to shame women for having sex lives outside of marrying one man as a virgin and putting up with his dusty penis for the rest of your life. We can't keep using language for insults that is intended to hurt people who are already marginalized, who are already being hurt, and claim to be a part of the resistance or a part of the solution or different from those who are in power who are hurting everyone. No, you're actually supporting them. And they don't even need you to vote for them or give them your money. You are just making sure that everyone around you keeps the ideology that they want you to have. That everyone around you knows you think being gay is bad, that you think having a mental illness is bad, to the point that it should be used as an insult. Our language matters. And if we're not careful with it, we're going to end up ostracizing everyone around us because we've used all of them as insults. And we think that they should just suck it up. Thank you for once again tuning into the podcast this week. I hope that you will follow me wherever it is that you follow podcasts. You can find all of my links at linktree.com/mosaicinprogress. You can find the podcast there. You can find my social media there. You can find links to send me money if you choose to try to support this work that I'm doing. And I hope that I will see you all next week as we both continue to work on our mosaic in progress.